All right.
Almost press leave meeting again.
I'm never going to get used to that. It creeps me out every time.
I don't know.
What
Maybe by next year you'll be used to it.
Recording in progress.
Yeah, it is weird.
It's fun to me. I like it because it's very precise to know when you are or are not being recorded for like different viewers.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, I like that.
Yeah.
It creeps me out because I'm scared of anything animatronic. Creeps the hell out.
I'm just I almost last meeting I actually did press leave meeting, and so Coda had to wait like 5 minutes to put me back in. That's the only thing that I'm like, oh right, press the button.
I'm green screen in my room now.
Yep.
Hey guys.
Ready? Hello everyone.
Hello.
So the first thing we were gonna talk about was gonna be B-roll. And does anybody know what B-roll is, first of all, before we start?
I do, but I'll give other people chances. If no one guesses it, I'll say something.
Does anybody want to guess what it is?
It's the secondary camera take. So you have the A camera and you have like the B camera. Am I right?
That can, well, yes and no. That can be used for B-roll. You can use one camera, the whole setup. B-roll is more like.
Can I say?
What was that?
Can I say?
Yeah, go ahead.
B-roll is basically, it could be the secondary camera, but mostly it's like the footage that they use the inserts for the scenes. So if they're let's say if they're talking about the top that's spinning on the ground on the table in front of them, they would get B-roll of that footage of the top spinning. So any extra, it's bonus footage, what it stands for.
An inanimate object, basically, right?
No, just like shooting extra footage that they need for basically to explain the scene.
Yeah, so it can be atmospheric shots. It can be, like Brent said, and inanimate objects. Some people do get stock footage, Raphael. It's undirected footage of subjects or people. Establishing shots can do it if it doesn't have like the main scene within it, if it's just kind of like establishing a place. Like in Friends, they just have a B-roll shot of an apartment, the outside of an apartment, which is where they say they live. So that's not really the main scene, but it's to establish the location in the area. And
yeah,
so
it's a random apartment in New York that they use to put as their apartment.
Or it's any like pickup shots or stock footage, like Daniel was saying, if somebody was talking about this this blue, what is that? Peacock?
Blue ball. Blue top.
Talking about like a ball or a rock, and then you just show a clip of the rock. That clip of the rock would be the B-roll. So it's just to kind of complement whatever someone's saying. You'll see a lot of B-roll in like interviews and stuff. When the person's talking to the camera, they go off and show a scene of something. They show what they're talking about. All those shots would be considered B-roll.
Because otherwise it would just be boring to just see their face talking. So they put other images.
Yeah, it's more like Arden said, it's like supplementary footage that can be added later to fill in either time. It can be used to cover cuts or mess ups or mistakes, or it's just used to complement whatever they're talking about to kind of show it. Like if someone's talking about a tree they saw when they were a kid, and you just see like a random scene of a tree, that's the B-roll footage, the tree, while they're talking. The talking is the A-roll. So if you go back to the person talking, that's the A-roll. Then you go to the tree, B-roll. In films, it's usually used for that. It's usually used for like little, like especially in independent films when they're talking about something and they kind of just show a memory without any dialogue or any sound. It's just a B-roll shot that's playing over the clip. Does anyone have any comments or questions on that?
On B-roll? Not a particular moment. I think it would be useful to actually see clips with like A-roll and B-roll added in to really differentiate, if that makes any sense. Be like, this is a B-roll clip.
I can't show any during the recording because then YouTube actually kicks it up and says that it's copyright, and then it doesn't.
Here, I'll give you a clip you could use. It's fine with me.
Wait, let me see something real quick.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, B-roll usually doesn't have any audio. It's usually the audio comes from the A-roll, the primary footage. And then they overlay it with B-roll. Sometimes B-roll can have audio, but most of the time it does not.
I like
I'm
So,
that.
good.
for example,
I'm
If-
gonna send you a link, Lakota.
Okay.
one example that they gave here
Is
is,
Facebook
for
or
example, a news article. I don't know if that would be the same. One person gave an example of them shooting like an interview or a news article, and while the person is talking, images of the things they're talking about is showing, and that is the B-roll. The person
What time do I jump
talking,
to?
huh?
I'm talking to Daniel. He sent me a clip.
Oh, okay.
Daniel rocks. Tiny Two Kitchen.
Daniel?
Hmm?
What time do I jump to for the example?
Basically all throughout it, there's different B-roll shots of them talking. Like if you go to right at 3:55,
355?
3:55, 4:20.
So like this kind of thing would be B-roll, just showing her hands chopping the stuff while she's talking. It's just kind of showing like what she's doing, but then when you cut back to the actual scene of her talking, it's the A-roll. More like the interview type of style.
Like right here, it's about to go.
Right here.
There you go.
And that would be A-roll when they're showing the actual person she's talking, but just like small clips setting up the scene or cutting to things. TV shows use it a lot too. When they're
would
like
the-
getting ready to go to commercial, they might show something in the room, like maybe a pet or something like that.
Would the pot be considered B-roll or no?
It
Yes.
can be. So B-roll is considered, it doesn't necessarily have to link up with what the speaker is talking about. Like if you watch anything, if you watch news, that's all the news is just B-roll. So when they do like news articles and, oh, we just had a murder here at whatever street, blah, 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 blah. And then you'll see like random shots of like, you know, traffic lights or buildings. That's considered B-roll as well. There's
Okay.
really no clear cut as to, you know, what you can consider B-roll, because it can be just like with slated media's footage there. It could connect directly to the video, or it could be like somebody talking and then it could link up to something else, like, you know, outside of the interviewer's topic or whatnot. So it's just like a bunch of footage that's being overlapped the main subject, or the main video, should I say.
Yeah, it's just like a bunch of extra additional footage. Usually they're set up to either the location or just to have a cutaway for if there's any kind of error in the primary footage. It's really good to have over like a larger amount of footage to use than less. So always try to get as much as you can when you're shooting a video or a film or something, because it gives the editor more space to maneuver.
Yeah, and if there's, let's say if someone looks at the camera for a split second, you can cut to that B-roll and take out that shot of them looking at the camera.
I would say within limits, because if you have like an excessive amount of unusable footage or footage that's irrelevant, then actually that's worse. It's like you want to get as many relevant shots or useful clips that you can, I would say.
Oh,
No.
yeah, definitely.
Well,
But you don't want to
and no
like
for
just
that.
rely. You don't want to rely on B-roll, but you want to be able to have the option to.
You want to have that
Yeah.
stock footage on the background in case of anything. If someone's
definitely.
showing, let's say, a pop can saying Coca-Cola and you don't have permission, you can cut to that B-roll and get away from that can.
One
That makes
example of B-roll might be like showing a clock and then like showing a clock at a later time, just to like show that time has passed. That could be.
I agree. I just meant like, you know, you within like certain creative constraints, because if you like make it like infinity, you could have like an infinite amount of footage on something. So I'm saying that there's definitely a healthy balance between, you know, making sure that you get coverage for everything that might be applicable and being completely excessive.
Yeah.
You're right. That's why they
Yep.
have it broken down into principal photography and then second unit and then whatnot.
Yeah, that
Because you're absolutely right. Like you want to try to get some footage that has something to do or have some kind of meeting with the shot, but you never know what's going on in that editing room. Like sometimes the editor could be like, I just want something that's like has nothing to do with anything, because like every editor has a different style. So like a better way to get an understanding would just be to start editing, and then you kind of get the hint of like,
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Yeah. If you have like 15 hours for a 15-minute video, then you're going to be like, how much of this is relevant?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, couple hours, okay, that's a lot of like extra stuff. We got a lot to work with, but like, where do you draw the line?
But sometimes,
Imagine 50 hours of footage for like 15 minutes. You're like, okay, this doesn't make sense.
but
That's
some
all.
people will dedicate a whole day to B-roll. Some
Yeah.
people
Okay,
aren't
that makes sense. No, I
And
just
then-
meant like I don't know what the limits are for like that, because you mean you could shoot something forever.
Yeah, and there's times where like I will go through some B-roll and I'd be like, I can't really use it for the main video, but I could use it for some ending credits or something else. Like it could be used for something else. You could always rewrap it for something completely has nothing to do with the main topic or anything. It's always helpful just to have as much as you possibly can get of everything of B-roll.
And also, you could use it for other projects as well. Like if you don't use it for that project, you can use it for another project.
True.
Yeah, especially seeing like a city scenery or like
That's-
these trees.
that's
if you're
stock
doing something
footage.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, stock footage can also be used. Or you can
No,
sell
but-
it. Like honestly, like if you have a 4K camera and you take some good shots, you can also sell it to these stock footage websites.
That's true.
That is very true.
But make sure
Yep.
you organize it. I just wrote that in the chat. But make sure you organize it all really well. Say if you have like 3 hours of like kind of like stock footage, and you might want to use a piece of it for the video. Yeah, the better you organize it, the more everything smoothly runs together.
My
Yes.
only thing about stock footage is that sometimes like the people that shoot the stock footage shoot it so good that it stands out from the rest of the video, or vice versa. Sometimes the actual movie stands out more than the stock footage. So you got to be careful about like, I'm going to get this stock footage of this. And if it's too clean, if it's too like, just the style is too different, it's going to stand out like a sore thumb. I have a movie right now that's sitting there. I did the sound for it, and they're getting me to make a trailer for it. And I'm just like, man, it's got some gorgeous shots, but it's just like you can tell where the stock footage is at. You could just tell.
Yeah.
You could tell that it's
Yeah.
like. What do you mean by
It's
that?
not that everything else is bad. It's just that you could just tell like the way. Because here in DC, we have the White House, we have the Capitol, and blah blah blah. So when you think DC, that's what you think about. You think about the White House, you think about the Capitol and stuff like that. But normally, when you think that stuff, you think spy movie, government, military, all that stuff. But this was like, in the ghetto of DC. So like you don't really see that part. So it kind of stood out. You know what I mean? Like the theme of the stock footage didn't match the actual theme of the actual movie. And the director was like, well, I want them to know it's DC. And I was like, well, I get that, but like you're showing the wrong side of DC right now. Like it just looks weird because you're giving up this spy type thing, and the footage that you have for stock footage doesn't match like the rest of the movie, in my opinion.
Right.
That makes sense, that's good to know. And like by labeling it, then you're able to like differentiate. So if you come and you be like, so this doesn't match what we're doing, but we're going to keep this for potentially shelf it, this whole section for something else. And there's nothing wrong with that too. I would say like don't throw stuff needlessly away. I mean, unless you really. Yeah. So like if you have it,
but
like,
getting the stock footage in the first place was probably like
why'd you do that? Yeah, I don't know.
more attention to what they're trying to grab.
Like if
Yeah,
like if
using B-roll, you're trying to like either set the tone, you can use it to provide flexibility in the edit, establish characters or the setting with different shots. You can break up monotony if it's just like a character talking directly to the screen. You can maybe like show a picture or something that would be considered B-roll if they're talking about a relationship they've had, or maybe their husband died or something and they have the urn. You can show the urn. And it's to cover up gaps or errors. So you just
They have
a lot of different uses.
The stock footage and B-roll is the same thing.
Yes and no. You can use stock footage as B-roll. B-roll is more or less something that you're gathering within your shoot. Stock footage is stuff you buy, like somebody else shot it, you bought it, and you own the rights to it. Well, you technically buy the rights to somebody else's footage, so you can ingest it into your film. So like this film that I was just talking about, the one in DC. So it
Yeah.
has all these the stock footage they bought. It was like these aerial shots, these helicopter shots. And it's kind of like it stands out from the rest of the film because they didn't have a helicopter. So like there's no other shots with helicopters or aerial shots in it. So those are the only aerial shots are with the stock footage. So it's kind of like stands out from the rest of the film because the rest of the film is on sticks, maybe a little dolly move here and there, but that's about it. And
So
then
it
when
doesn't
he gets to the stock footage, then it's like all these aerial shots, and it's like, dude, like,
So basically, it makes it look like it's like, you know, almost like one of those things where you see the trailer, it looks so great, and then when you see the movie, you're like, yo, what happened to all these good scenes or the good shots?
exactly.
And then the movie sucks, and you're like, yo, the trailer sold it.
Not that this movie sucked, but you
Not
get
it sucked, but
you get the gist of
visual.
what I'm
But
saying.
it feels like a different movie, is what you're
it
saying.
feels like
Yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
different movie.
Right. It's almost like when you see a billboard or online, you see they advertising like, you know, this movie's coming out. You just see the shot of this guy and his gun. It looks so clean, like you said, with the aerial shot. You're like, oh man, this movie looks good. And then you click on it, and it's like a C movie or a D
Yeah.
movie. You're like, yo, how you got an A shot with a B movie?
Yeah. It's just like a movie poster. You're like, oh man, that movie looks dope. And then you click on it on Netflix and it's like, yo, this movie's some trash. But the poster
Right,
looked
right.
good.
Cough,
Yeah.
cough, Dragon Ball Evolution. Cough, cough. Last Airbender.
Yeah.
Well, it's hard because like if you make like you know, you have certain style and it's like you like, you know, thinking from a movie, you know, creation perspective, you know, like trying to put this together and you have these good shots that you want to make it well. So I guess you have to make a decision, like either you're gonna up the movie footage to match like the add-ins, or you're gonna downgrade the add-ins so that at least it like matches all the way through for the right you know, market.
Exactly.
Mm,
But this is also why it's good to even plan your B-roll, because then you can know what you want to grab and what you're going to have to get off of stock footage, and maybe you can look it up beforehand so you can kind of see what you're going for.
Right.
And
like,
then
hey,
Sometimes
like
you can't, like
Lakota.
depending on the location, you might just arrive and be like, oh, this would be a cool shot to pick up for a B-roll, maybe, and then you do it. But other times you can actually plan it out if it actually complements your story or tells it in its own way.
yeah, and then like it's again like you can keep that, and like, you know, if you tell a story and it turns out really well, maybe you do like a second one, and then that's where you kind of like up the, I don't know, you add more cool shots. You know how they do that in movies, like they make the second one even better than the.
The production.
Right.
budget movie.
I won't say anymore.
It's
Are
like
you talking about
Lakota
the
face
90s?
not showing is like a, you know, it's like a B-roll.
It's
If you're
what?
talking about the 90s, I totally understand. If you're talking about now, no, I don't understand. People suck now.
Arden, you have a question?
Yeah, so regarding like if a B-roll looks too polished compared to, or like just thematically a little bit different than the footage you've shot, what would, I guess, like, I don't really know how the process would work. I'm assuming it might be different for each person when they make their own movie, but how couldn't you just like theoretically just go back to the beginning and just add more of that similar like B-roll to the beginning of the movie to like establish that? Or I'm not sure how it works.
You're talking about how to like capture the like for Brian's thing, like how to
Yeah, if he's worried about it thematically being too different, is it that he can't go back to the beginning and change it? Does that depend on like him having to have certain parts of the movie done and he can't like change, like go way back and edit any earlier parts? Or is it just that he realized the B-roll doesn't match with any of the footage?
It doesn't match with.
Yeah, it doesn't. So if you live in DC or maybe New York. So like we'll take New York for example. So like you have Manhattan, which is like the city, but then you have some rough areas like I'm not going to try to offend anybody, but let's see. I don't know what's a rough part. Not Brooklyn. Brooklyn is pretty cool. The Bronx maybe. The Bronx maybe.
Yeah.
Like you
Harlem.
wouldn't like yeah, that you wouldn't see a Statue of Liberty shot, representing the Bronx. Even though you're in New York, but like it's kind of representing, it's not really representing the Bronx. Like people in the Bronx know what's up. Like they know they have certain streets, landmarks to stand out to say, hey, we're in the Bronx. You wouldn't show the Statue of Liberty and then be like, oh, we're in the Bronx.
Yeah, I understand that. That's like too broad. That doesn't
Yeah, and
look
that's pretty much what they got in this movie here, because it's got like the whole, the memorial, the Capitol building, the Lincoln Memorial, and they're all lined up and they're doing like these aerial helicopter shots. But they're shooting, the basis is in Southeast DC, which is a rough area of DC.
Okay.
So it just doesn't match up. It looks too like
so
government, presidential.
I don't know if I'm like being too nosy, but like was the person who was in charge of the B-roll different than the people who are shooting it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I don't know. Maybe that's
They
like
didn't
that feels like a
they didn't capture the
communication
B-roll on
thing.
set. They
They
actually
did.
got it off of.
They did get B-roll. They did, but then they also wanted additional stock footage as well, because
Okay.
they didn't have helicopters. I don't know why. They could have gotten helicopters, but they didn't have helicopters. So they're like, oh, we want some of this, stock footage. But there is B-roll. There's B-roll there. There's a whole bunch of. They got like everything, but then they wanted the stock footage as well. But as opposed to them going out and getting their own stock footage, like they went and just bought it.
They didn't want to shoot any.
No.
Well, sometimes it's more economical to just buy, depending on what you're doing, right? Like if it's more economical to buy it than to actually go shoot it yourself and you're okay with it, then that makes sense, depending on like what the project is for. I could see
But
why.
can you do drone shots though?
Yeah, if you have a drone. I don't know why they didn't go ahead. Well, oh yeah, we're in DC. Yeah, they would have never gotten away with it. But yeah,
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, they don't allow it?
no, not in DC.
You're not allowed to buy stock footage in DC? Sorry, I
No,
missed
you're allowed
that.
to buy stock. You're not allowed to have drones.
Oh, what? Why?
Because it's so close to the White House, and then we have all these airports here. So
That
you
sucks.
wouldn't be there's really no zones that you can fly in. So they consider it a national security hazard or whatever you want to call it. We talked about it in one meeting. Like there's just so much going on. Like if you go in certain parts of DC, like your GPS will act like super slow because like we're right next to the Pentagon, and like they have all these jammers that will like, just for national security reasons and stuff like that. So they don't do the drone thing.
Yeah.
So when they doing those, like you said, well, that's probably before, but moving forward, they're not gonna be doing too many, FBI, Pentagon shutting down, or they just gonna use those stock footage from before and implement that.
Well, when Hollywood, they have a good relationship with Hollywood. So when Hollywood comes down, like they give them access to everything, and they can afford helicopters and stuff like that. They'll go out and buy a helicopter with a nice camera rigged up to it and get all their helicopter shots in one day.
'Cause I was
I
gonna
would
say you
love
could
to
go
watch that.
Atlanta
Fucking
to
fun.
Tyler Perry Studios.
Yeah, I mean that's why people move to like Canada and Atlanta, because it's like the land of the free out there. You can just pretty much do whatever you want and not have to worry about
Well,
it.
within like, limits and stuff, but yeah, because there are rules up here as well, but I guess it's probably not as strict as DC. I mean,
Yeah, it's hard to film down there. We have over like 60 police organizations down here, so it's like setting up a camera. Like you're good if you have a camera in your hand, you're good. But the second you set down the tripod, is like that's where everybody in their their mama comes out of nowhere. It's like, dude, where did you guys even come from? They're like, oh, you guys can't shoot here. Like, you gotta have a permit, and that if you have any experience like dealing with the permit, that thing it's ridiculous.
In New York, you could be shooting in the middle of the street. I mean, like,
Yes.
be in Brooklyn, you could just walk anywhere, nobody to bother you. The only person be looking at you weird is the cars are like, why are you taking up this parking spot?
Yeah.
Nobody
I love
cares. You could put a cone and set up your camera and just start shooting, and nobody comes and say, hey, where's your permit?
Well, that's kind of nice, like, you know, to have places.
Unless
like
you're
that.
shooting Central Park, because I hear that a lot of people try that. And
Not with a big
Yeah,
set.
You hop a
By the
fence and you don't
cops.
tell anybody.
Yeah, you could shoot. You know, just can't be with no big whole set and no trailer. If you going like a couple of guys, you know, some couple of your student friends, you can get us some
Video,
shots.
though. You're saying this?
Well, it's the same thing, like,
I'm just
Nah,
saying,
even if it's a
just
student
to
production,
be
you don't want to get
clear,
caught. In the
we
Central Park.
do not condone
Yes, we
illegally
do.
shooting.
Yes, we
That's his problem. That he's speaking for himself.
Look, hold on.
We of LCloud Media Studies do not condone illegal activities.
Look,
Once
she's
you don't
calling
get
it.
caught,
She's
Thank
calling
you.
it
don't get caught. It's not
illegal
Headshots in movie history were
shooting.
stolen.
All right, the proper
We're just
terminology for.
covering our asses over here.
All right, the proper terminology is not illegal shooting. It's called guerrilla style filmmaking.
I know the proper term, Mister. No, I'm kidding.
I was gonna say the same thing.
we're not
I'm
guilty
just-
until you get caught.
Yeah, we don't
I'm
call it
just saying
illegal.
we're covering our butts. We're covering our butts. This is being recorded.
And that
Just want to make sure.
Yep.
Very clear.
You do not condone guerrilla filmmaking.
I get
No,
all my ideas from Priscilla anyway, by the way.
Wait, like,
I do.
What? You're cutting out.
That's pretty crazy to be that. Right, so there's lines, like, obviously, if you're going down to Granville Street without a phone and stuff, like, that's a bad idea.
Yep.
Anyway, should we
But
move
yeah,
on?
anyway, does anybody have any other questions or comments about B-roll before you move on?
Oh, did you guys go over? So keep in mind when you're getting your B-roll, as you can see in this picture here, like you have this one where it's like, it's definitely autumn. So you got to keep in mind of what season you're going with. Because obviously, like if you shot in the summertime, you wouldn't want to get stock footage or B-roll with autumn leaves or anything like that. Continuity. Yeah.
Continuity errors.
Yeah. So
Unless
that's
you're traveling to different countries in your film. And show that.
Which is why I feel like if you're gonna go for stock footage, if you know there's some shots in your thing that you're gonna want, that you know you're probably not gonna be able to get yourself, just check and see if you have it before
We
you.
actually saw a bunch of channels where basically part of their job is just traveling the world and getting stock footage from places that they went to
That'd be so
and
fun.
selling it to different companies, which like it was so amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't their primary job, obviously, but it was like a thing that they did.
So, wait, what?
You snooze, you lose. Go back and listen to the recording. Okay.
No, wait, just say that one more time, mate. What the volume got on me.
Nope, you snooze.
No, I said that there's some people who make it like a side gig to when they travel, when they get to travel to these different places in the world, they shoot a bunch of stock footage and sell it to companies.
That's smart. I wouldn't say that like main business.
No, it's not their main business, but it is amazing. It is a lot of work. Like they actually edit the drone footage to make it seem cinematic and the GoPro and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, pretty much, Raphael. It's side hustle stock. Because they're not like that's not their primary reason for being there, but they just always do it as well.
Yeah, and that pays for part of the trip too.
That's smart.
But yeah, all right. So now we're gonna move on to composition and filmmaking, and we're gonna talk about a few of the rules. Well, they're not exactly rules, not like anything. They're just foundations for you to know, so that you can choose when you want to break them or if you want to follow them. But composition and filmmaking, there's a few different things. Anybody want to start off talking about anything about composition, framing?
Making my stairs, I'm not thinking.
I was gonna say,
No, we'll
Brian,
just let you take it away.
you and your ever evolving knowledge. Nothing to share.
Oh yeah, framing is just as important as lighting, if not the most important part, because this is what you start off with before you even start lighting anything up. You want to get your framing right. So I'm not necessarily sure how you're going to start this off as far as where you're going to go with it, but
We're gonna go
Ah,
into rule of thirds and golden ratio in a second, but I was just gonna say talking about lines
And then we're gonna rant about how
of
the
view,
triangle
where
thing is
people
kind of
look,
stupid.
stuff like
Okay.
that.
okay, yeah.
So like as you guys can see in this picture, like they're showing a bunch of different arrows pointing to this guy. And it's because they've set it up where these lines, literal lines within the frame, like the line from the what is that called? The staircase is pointing down towards him. So your eye naturally follows it down to that. He's in the center of frame, so that's usually where you look anyway. But all these lines are leading to him so that our point of view just follows that flow of the scene and we can just look naturally to that point. It's not confusing. We're not wondering if we're supposed to look over here because it's all in focus. So if you had a bunch of different people over here, you might be wondering who you're supposed to look at. But since we have like one subject and it's on equal distance both sides and all these lines are pointing to him, our eyes naturally go to him immediately. And that's what you really want when you're doing composition within film. You want to make sure that your audience is looking where you want them to.
So is it not like with the props and everything, you want to make sure it's not in a way of like distracting the audience from looking at it?
Yes. Like Lakota's picture, for example.
Yeah,
He's got a tree sticking out of his head.
right.
To
Priscilla's
be fair, he distorted the heck out of that picture.
Priscilla,
I don't
Oh my
like it.
gosh. It drove me crazy. I took it and then he asked me to like fix the lighting. And then he went to crop it and he distorted the heck out of it. And it drives me crazy looking at it. I've been trying to get him to change it for the longest time.
Yeah, I don't
that
like
has
it either,
nothing to do with the
Lakota.
composition. The tree is sticking out of my head, like he's.
Yeah, it's
But in
distracting
the,
the
well, before
composition.
you cropped it, it was
So
way
now we
lower.
have learned-
Okay.
We've learned now that Lakota's part tree.
Ah,
That part left.
Lakota's
So-
part tree now.
Sarah, you gotta
So let
get
me
with
ask
the
you a
club.
question.
No, I'm kidding.
But with the lighting, right? So you're doing when you start doing the composition framing, right?
Just to be clear, that was an amateur
When-
photo. I've gotten a lot better. Just making that clear.
But I have to say, that is actually not bad of a picture for you, Priscilla. I'm surprised.
What do you mean from me?
You're half blind. Come on.
What is that supposed? Excuse me, sir, but I am very good at detail. All right. Due to the fact
Okay.
that I have to get very close to see everything, I am
Okay.
very good at noticing detail.
This is the first known picture I've seen, so ha.
Okay, well, thank you.
Guys, all right. Right, you have your hand raised. Go ahead.
And I'm not half
Yeah,
blind. I'm technically
so-
legally blind.
No, I'm going to mute
So-
you. Stop.
Yeah, so I was trying to say like with the framing where Brian was saying how the picture is framed well, where you know the composition of the this picture, that with the lighting now comes into play, you're gonna make sure that the lighting is not too much bright around the objects. You want the lighting more focusing, but with this is like the lighting is focusing on the background and in front of him. So is it to show that he's looking at something in front of him? That's when the light is focusing at more.
yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like giving him a silhouette kind of look.
Okay, right. So it's almost like you want the viewer to look at what he's looking at, knowing that he's there, but you're not really focusing too much on him. You want to look what's in front of him, right?
Yeah.
That, or you can look at him and then look directly at the light. Right after
Okay.
whatever draws your eye immediately in this picture is what they were probably going for. So
Right.
does he draw your attention first, or does the lighting around him draw your
The
attention?
lighting in front of him and those little two cubes drew my attention immediately.
Okay. What about
So
everyone else?
because I was looking at a video you have in your crates of videos, and they were talking about how even with framing, like like you said, the second most important thing with framing is the lighting, because the lighting, if you have it too bright or illuminating the object too much, then that could be distracting. But then they're saying you could all change that in editing, but then you're making the editor do a whole lot of work for no reason. Is that true?
So composition and framing is mainly used to draw the viewer's eye to where you want it to be and to have the elements background, foreground, midground, whether you want it to be small in the frame, large in the frame. So this, I'm not really sure what this is from, but it could be giving him a sense of, we want to know, like you said, what he's looking at. We want to know what this location is. So right now he's in awe, or maybe he's wondering what this is, or he's getting ready to confront something. So he's the center of attention in a way, but also we're also looking past him to see what's coming next. And so then the next
be
step
clear,
might be the location itself.
but to be clear, one mistake that one of the people in this week's video made that we were discussing, Brian, Dakota, a bunch of people mentioned, was you do not you try your darndest to get that framing right in the video, because when you get it in post, you will lose quality of the image, unless like like Brian was saying, you shoot it in 4K and then you have the images in 1080, but you will lose some quality zooming in, which is why they say get the framing right.
Right?
No, but you shouldn't do that, because in editing, you're still gonna lose.
So you want to line
quality.
up your shot. You want to line up your shot right on set. You don't want to wait until post. Like, I'll just zoom in a little bit to get him in that area I want. If you want him,
Because then you're gonna lose quality.
get him in the center of frame before you do the shot. That's what she's saying.
Otherwise, you're gonna lose the quality of the image by zooming in and post.
Gotcha.
So yeah, the composition.
Kind of like, oh,
and
sorry, honey, I was just
framing
gonna say, kind of like when you zoom in on a photo and it gets grainier and grainier the closer you get to it, kind of like that.
So it's just to see like what subject has the control of the scene, who's in focus. Somebody said, the size of the subject in frame, what they do. This is one director. The size of the subject in their frames is related to the importance in the story. Of course, it's not all the time, but maybe because this guy's small, he's a small part of the bigger picture. Maybe the location's more important than him in this instance. I don't know. We'd have to actually see the scene to be able to tell, but the size of them, like when you have a character closer to the camera, they're more important. If they're looking at the camera and they're closer and there's someone smaller in the background, usually that means we're paying attention to the person closer. We're seeing their reaction to whatever the other person's saying or whatever's happening within the scene. We're paying more attention to the person who's close. They're bigger. They have more importance within the scene, usually. They also say, like, think of depth. As you can see, there's a lot of stuff going on in this picture. The foreground has these staircases leading into where he is. He's in the midground, and then the background has those lights and the location. So it looks kind of 3D. It's not flat. They say be careful with having flat images unless that's what you're going for. If you want it to seem kind of boring and mundane, like maybe the character feels like their life is very repetitive and they're very bored, then yeah, you might have like some flat images where they're in front of like a bus sign or something and that's all it is. It's just a flat street. But otherwise, when you're trying to create a story and you want there to be depth, you want there to have stuff in the foreground, the midground, and the background to kind of make it feel more immersive. You also want to think about contrast, and you want to make sure that, do you want your character to blend into the background or do you want them to stand against it? There was a video that showed if you had like a red background, like there was a sign in the background that was red and the person's wearing an orange shirt, if you put them in front of that red, they're going to blend into the background more than if you put them in front of something that's green, like a tree. And so you want to be sure you're putting them where you want them. Do you want them to stand out? Do you want them to blend into the background? Maybe they're a shy person, so you actually do want them to feel like they're blended into the background. Maybe you want them to stand out because they're capturing everyone's attention. So you want to pay attention to what your story calls for, what the character's going through, and then think about stuff like that as well when you're framing.
Makes sense.
All right, let's skip to the next thing. All right, rule of thirds. Brian, you want to talk about this at all? Daniel, anybody? Or should I just go ahead?
Just go ahead, buddy.
All right, so in this one, it's actually using the rule of thirds to separate the people. Normally what the rule of thirds is used for is to capture the important, the part you want people to look at. These intersections. Rule of thirds is like taking a tic-tac-toe board and putting it on the screen, dividing it up into 9 equal parts. And where these little circles are in the middle, where the intersections happen, is where it's theorized that people's eyes go to first. So the main importance of the scene goes to these, either the lines or the intersections themselves. And that's where the main parts of the piece will be. They usually line up somebody's eye with like the top third of it. Let me see if I have some. Or they, you know, that's how a good way to center them. The window is within the rule of thirds. Let me see. Like that. The sunflower is directly on, the middle of the sunflower is directly on the intersection in the bottom right. So it's just like a rule of thumb where you put whatever's the most important on one of those lines. You'll see this a lot in landscape photography where either the sky is going to be this in the top line on the horizontal plane, or it's going to be the 2/3 of it. Sort of like that. You see how like the water's taking up 1/3 while the sky's taking up 2/3.
Yep.
On that line, you're kind of lining it up to get a good picture. When it's in the filmmaking, when it's moving, it's a little bit harder. And they say that it's not as exact as it is in photography, but they do usually try to keep things in these thirds.
So is it like a center shot? Just making sure they're in the center?
No, not exactly. It's because
I'll be back in the meeting.
you see that top left where the lines intersect? That's directly where their attention should be on the subject in the frame.
Well,
The most important part of the scene, they usually put, especially in pictures, they usually put it on those intersections because that's where people's eyes are drawn. And it makes it more appealing for the frame.
This is where it gets kind of like scientific-y. Where
yeah,
it's
because
trying
I'm
to,
looking at the middle box. I didn't look at that first.
I mean,
top.
you're looking at it, but it's they're naturally assuming that like when you like if you were to close your eyes and then open them real quick, like that's gonna be like where your eyes are naturally drawn to, just naturally, like the things that you're not even aware of, like you're subconsciously doing these types of things, and it's like I said, it breaks down into a science. So the reason why we went from 4:3 televisions to 16:9 televisions is to complement the way we see things. We see in wide vision. That's why we have peripherals and whatnot, as opposed to the 4:3, which is a square. So they've widened the television. And it's also the reason why we have, if you've ever watched the movie, any movie with like, it's called an anamorphic crop, but most people call them the little black bars on top and the bottom. And the reason why they put those black bars on the top and the bottom is because when you're watching a movie, if you're watching a movie in a full screen on a full screen 16:9, there's so much going on around the TV. Like I have in my TV in my room right now, I have like my PlayStation on the bottom. I have a shelf on top of it, like hovering above my television because it's like directly in the center. I have a PlayStation and an Xbox right next to it. So I have so much to look at. And you have a full screen, like that kind of gets a little distracting. So they put these black bars to kind of cut the edges and the top off to keep your eyes in the center of the screen. And it's kind of like guiding my eyes towards the middle to keep my eyes away from the edges of the screen to keep from distractions. It's all a science to it. So
because
if you're framing things a certain way, it can either guide your eyes to a subject or it can guide your eyes away from a subject. So I don't know.
It's also about the space. Like you see how this one's mainly, it's about the dog, but it's also about the background, what he's looking at. So it's also about the space you give them. So if you're putting something in the middle, they have equal space all around them, and it's hard to tell where to look after you look at the subject itself. But something like you look at the dog, and then your eyesight goes to where the dog's looking. He's looking.
One thing I noticed a lot. Oh, sorry, honey. Go ahead. Finish.
I just finished.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I can hear your voice after the recording. That's why the time isn't right. Anyway, so one thing that I noticed a lot is a good example that they gave was with landscape photography, which I really love. And they were showing how when you want the sky to be the center, to be the center, you show the sky as most of the image, and then the rest of the landscape on the bottom. When you want it to be equal, you show both halves, like that picture over there. When you want the landscape to be the main focus, the sky is only the top third, and the landscape is the rest of the image. That explanation really helped me understand. I think Coda can get up some images for me. That was really helpful. The video explaining that and showing that, how to frame it properly.
I got a question. Well, with that picture Lakota had showed with the lady and the guy kissing in the top third left, like when I closed my eyes and tried to do what Brian was saying, I initially looked at her foot because it's kicking out, and that was a distraction for me before I looked at that top left. And I guess that's still in the rule of the third, but is that like if you close your eyes?
It could just be.
So it could be
because you see those squares, and so you're automatically like, oh wait, shouldn't it be in the center?
No,
Because
it's not about the
because you see
squares.
the lines themselves. If you took away these lines, you might see it. You might not focus on her foot first, but maybe your eyes are drawn to the center of screen first. I mean, it's not a hard, fast rule that's exact for everyone.
Right.
They said it's more of like, it's kind of like those rules that are meant to be broken. You understand them so that later you can.
There's kind of one that
I love
has
them.
what she's talking about. Like
I love the rules that are meant
it's
to be
almost
broken.
on that line, this horizon, where you can see the sky takes up about 2/3 of it, while the below takes about 1/3. And that's usually like landscape photography. It definitely does a lot of this. If you can see this one as well, pretty much on that line where the sky.
I know. I wish you guys lived closer so I could be like, come on, let's go shoot some stuff.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Right? No, that would be fun. Like, just
I'll fire up the teleporter.
But you see, like they're lining up this bottom. The tree is on this on the intersection, so it's like one of the main focuses. But then the sky is taking up 2/3, and the land is taking up 1/3.
So another thing that they said is when it's to the center, especially when it's a face, you want your subject, the person watching, to focus on that center and nothing else around it. When it's sideways, it's so that you can see part of the background sometimes. So it also depends on what you want to show, what you want to be the central focus, how much attention you want to give.
You're very in and out.
Oh my God. The stupid earbuds.
Huh?
Okay, what part did you understand? Because you were very in and out for me too.
You have to say the whole thing over again.
Yeah,
Okay.
You're
All right,
in and
so
out. Lakota's fine.
Okay, so what I was saying was another thing that they said that was helpful for me was that when your subject is in the middle of the frame, mostly in video, it's because you want the person viewing it to focus on them mostly and not in the background. When it's sideways, when it's like he's to the side, you can either want to give attention to both the subject and the surroundings, or you might want to give more attention to one than the other. And so they said it really depends on what you want the focus to be, how much you want the background to show or not to show, which I also thought was really interesting.
I think a good way to look at it in video is whenever you have a conversation going on between two people, they're not usually in the middle of the screen looking at each other. They're usually either the right or the left, and then they're looking the opposite way towards the other actor. If there's somebody on the right, if someone was where this mountain was and they were looking over to someone else on the left, then they'd have this whole open space, and that'd be like a shared space between the two characters talking back and forth. And then you go to the other character, they'd be on the left side of the screen talking to the right. And so then it's like it feels like they're having a shared space. And they also use this to make it feel like the person doesn't want to be in the conversation. If they have more empty space behind them, it makes it seem kind of like they want to turn and run. So it
just gives you a better understanding of space.
I think
as well,
the
like where people
absence
are.
of the space is what makes it very appealing for most people. Because the center of frame might be what you look at. Like if they're the one subject in the frame, then they're the most important thing. But if you're supposed to look at them and then you're supposed to look beyond them, then it's good to put them on one side of these lines or put them within these intersections so that your immediate attention goes to them, and then you follow past them to see what they're looking at or where they're going, what their journey is, stuff like that. But yeah. The videos in the syllabus actually show a lot of clips in movies where they're actually showing, like, a lot of movies are having it where the subject is on one of these intersection points. And if they have two characters, they're usually on one intersection point and the other one's on the other one. And so if you actually look at the videos, it's a lot easier to see, to visualize, than what I can like pull up from just a picture alone. But is there any comments on that or questions? Anything I didn't add?
No, I've been taught the rule of thirds kind of before. It's the same thing for painting as well. So if you're painting a photo, there's, you can take into consideration the rule of thirds as well. That's
There
right.
you go. See, we're looking like where he's looking now. Kind of seeing that he's looking off in the distance.
From his like kind of like a dirty shot, but POV type dirty shot.
Okay, so I found a specific video and it shows like the rule of thirds being used in all genres of film. I'm sending that one to the WhatsApp group for those of you that didn't.
You're cutting out again, but she's sending a WhatsApp thing to you guys.
Yeah.
God, okay,
believe
now
Brian-
it's the internet. It's the internet because I'm not
Brian
using the
Lacoste
It's
earbuds.
not the internet, but okay.
It's
I'm not
like-
using the earbuds. What else could it be?
So it's probably both of you using the internet and for the same
Yes.
thing.
Oh man, it's probably those earbuds.
It's the earbuds.
Yeah, because am I good?
I took them off. I'm not using them. What I'm saying is I found the specific video that shows them being used in all genres of film, and I sent it for those of you that don't remember or couldn't find it in the syllabus. Maybe passed by it by.
Thank you. Much better.
There you go.
What?
But yeah,
Come on,
so
Brian.
it's just a general rule of thumb
Yeah.
to show
agree.
like
It's
what
not
your
like
focus should be
mandatory
on.
that you have to have it.
Yeah, a lot of people call it more like the suggestion of thirds or the theory of thirds instead of the rule.
Yeah, because
because
it's not a
it's
hard and
not-
fast rule. Like,
Yeah, it's not a
you
hard
can
rule.
see like
So
a
it's
lot
almost
of these
like a whole
shots are
bunch
all
of-
from different movies, but they have them within these thirds because it's just more visually appealing.
Right.
Did we
So
realize it
basically,
or
there's a whole
not?
bunch of
There's a reason for it.
technical things that you could do, but it's up to your preference on what you want to use.
Yeah, the rule for it is more because it appeals, like psychologically, it appeals to the person watching. It's more appealing. It catches their eye more, and that's why a lot of filmmakers stick to it. But they say the same thing about that other weird mathematical loop thingy, and I hate that thing. So like, we'll see if that.
I think she's talking about the golden ratio.
Yeah, that's.
Oh, I
stupid.
thought you were talking about the Fabrici.
And then the triangle thing is absolutely ridiculous to me because they distort those triangles so much to try to make them look like triangles to me. But
We already kind of talked about lines and how your eyes kind of just follow the wherever those lines are going. You can paint either imaginary lines or physical lines, and you kind of follow them.
I like Raphael's comment.
This almost looked like the same one you were showing with the guy standing, where you see how
Yeah.
the lighting is in the back, all the way to in the
so
back of the page.
Raphael, oh sorry, Brent. I
Yeah,
was just,
Brent, it's kind of like that, but they're just physically showing you like, look what the lines could be. Like, you know.
Right.
so
right.
Raphael, no, they have the grid in most cameras. Like have that grid. So no, they're not always eyeballing it. After you use it for a while, you don't necessarily need the grid anymore
Those
because
modern
you
cameras
can.
and even phones, you can click like grid on, and it'll do that.
Yeah, I have mine on.
It'll look kind of like that, and you can just line up your shot however you want.
Yeah, so most cameras have that function
Like the portrait.
that you can turn on, and after you've used it for a while, a lot of filmmakers can turn it off because they kind of have it in their heads, or
I
they
don't
just
use
turn it
that
off
crap.
because they want to, or because they just don't feel it's necessary for their movie or whatever.
I feel like if you could overlay the grid and like on a movie, you would just see a lot of these things be used without even realizing it.
Yeah.
Mm.
The video especially shows so much. I was like, wow, I never noticed it.
So, all right, Brian, have you ever used golden ratio, or Daniel, or anybody? I feel like golden ratio is kind of, I don't know. When we were looking at it, it kind of just seemed like they were putting it wherever they wanted, and like it didn't actually make too much sense.
I want to know more about this golden ratio.
I mean, I understood the golden ratio. I think they put it like
I know the
turned it
phi
over.
grid, like that's easy to know. It's basically the same thing as rule of thirds. It's what the golden ratio uses, but
The golden ratio, like
itself is just kind of like what?
yeah, the triangle thing, I think is dumb.
So so the golden ratio and the phi grid, what's the difference? So I'm confused here. I'm following along here.
So the phi grid is it's basically the same thing as a rule of thirds. You divide the thing into 9 squares. You divide the frame into 9 squares. But you can see in this, the ones in the middle, they're more condensed. They're more closer together. And there's the 4 corners are a lot larger. So it's not 9 equal parts anymore. Now it's these 4 in the corner are a lot bigger. The one in the center is the smallest. And these other 4 are a little bigger. So it's just like changing the point of view a little bit to the side from what the
That seems like so much confusion.
No, that makes sense.
And no, they turn that thing over. It's not always on the bottom, which is why it's stupid. It's like they turn it left, they turn it right, they turn it sideways. The triangle one is even stupider because they're like, oh, it's the triangle. Coda will talk about it. I'm not.
As you can see, like the phi grid, it can be used the same way. You kind of put them on these intersections, the main focus. So then it's more in the center, and it's less spread apart. So it just depends.
I actually have something like this in my last shot. I mean, my last shoot. We did it. We were shooting them kind of almost in the center, but a little bit off. To kind of because they were both looking in the same direction. So we kind of like there was really no way of establishing right or left. I mean, there was, but you know, just to kind of be creative with it, we kind of put them both in the center, but just like slightly off to the right and then slightly off to the left.
Yeah. Do you think it looks better? Or?
I think it looks pretty cool. I think it looks pretty cool. It's different, but you have to be careful with it because if you don't do it right, it's gonna stand out.
There you go. You can see like the golden ratio versus the rule of thirds. Golden ratio uses what's called the phi grid, which is what we were just talking about. The rule of thirds, we already saw that. The lines are separated a bit.
It's basically what they were saying, and they showed it in nature. Like it's this perfect mathematical formula that shows perfect symmetry, and you see it in flowers, and you see it in a bunch of places in nature.
The general idea is your eye is going to go to around him, and then it's going to loop around in that kind of way to look at the rest of the frame.
Man, that reminds me of like going to college and you learning stuff that you're not gonna really use.
Yeah.
Hey, well, you don't know that.
Yeah, there was an entire video.
Be surprised at like what you end up using.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think
Have you ever used calculus yet?
It's very. I think I would feel very like you can use this, but I feel like once you kind of get used to it, once you start studying stuff about like framing and what looks good, what doesn't, kind of just forget these rules and just.
Yeah, I feel like these are kind of
but it's just to like give you a very good composition and a very good framing.
Well, like you kind of memorize it in your head, so when you look through the camera, you can almost see the lines.
Yeah, and the thing is, like I said, this one makes some sense. The triangle one.
So the thing is with this one can get very dangerous because with the rule of thirds is kind of like the rule of thirds is also like a safe mode. So like what I was telling you guys about the television with the 4x3 and the 16:9. So for all the stuff that was shot in 4x3 that hasn't been converted to 16:9 or vice versa. Let's say you shoot in 16:9, but for some reason you're playing your footage back on a 4x3 television, you're gonna lose some of the frame and it's gonna get cut off. So like if you were to stick to that this golden framing or whatnot, like there is a like the last shot you just showed with the guy on the rock. Like if you were to display that on the wrong type of television monitor, you would lose that guy or lose parts of the guy because he would be getting cut off, or the whole frame would just get distorted. That's the only downside of shooting like this, is because for me, like I like to have my stuff anamorphic. So if I were shooting a movie like that, a lot of this guy would be cut off from the anamorphic crop, just because.
Really?
So, yeah, so it's kind of like a permanent shot. Like I wouldn't be able to crop it. It would have to be displayed on a 16:9 to get the full frame. I mean, I could possibly. He's still got a decent amount of headroom and stuff. I should be able. But let's say they framed it a little bit lower and took away a lot more of his headspace. He would be like right on the top. So it's kind of you have to pay attention to when you're doing this stuff, and you have to have an understanding of like, are you going to be shooting strictly on 16:9? Are you going to crop it, or what's the deal? You got to keep that in mind too.
Yeah, I mean, like ideally, you'd probably want it to have like your whole. If you're shooting something, you want it to be all kind of shot for the same frame.
Yeah, because like if you think about it, like in a picture, the picture's still. So these rules apply a lot more to. I feel like the rules apply a lot more to pictures because when you're filming, people's eye lines are also going to follow what the characters look at, where they're moving, how the camera's moving, like like what we learned earlier, where the focus is going. So there's a lot of different ways to get people to look at what you want. So that's why I feel like these rules, like especially the more mathematical ones you get, are not as necessary, but they are good to have in mind when you are filming. That's how I feel about it.
No, it makes sense. A lot of times you're going to be, eyeballing stuff, but being able to understand the different ratios and types of shots, then you can almost, like I said, either bring it up on your camera, like at the grid. Because I think a lot of cameras, they have that function, don't they?
What?
Can't you, like on certain cameras, can't you bring out a grid like they have like?
Yeah, most cameras have that grid.
Even
cell phone cameras.
I don't know how many have the phi grid, the one that uses this golden ratio, but I do know almost all of them have a rule of thirds grid where it just breaks it up into 9 equal parts.
Okay, so with this phi grid, we have the little box, little triangle, and the bigger triangle, and then the bigger triangle. What are those for?
It's just like where these circles are, these little pink circles, that would be where your point of focus would start, and then it would loop around from the bigger box down into the rest of the frame, like this circle right here.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Like, you see how the circle has like little boxes in the center? What are those for? Or are they just irrelevant?
That's just like where it starts the focus, I think. Is that
so? But specifically, like if you zone in, you see the little boxes that like have anything specific for focus in there. Like that's the very pinpointed focus, or like
no, it's just a very complicated math equation. That's pretty much it. If you've ever taken any calculus class or anything where you're using grids or something like that, that's all it is. It's nothing.
Oh, okay. That makes
nothing.
Sense.
Yeah.
It's not important. Okay. It's just because that's the way that the math turned out. Okay, that makes sense. I understand that.
Why?
I guess they take into calculus stuff. So.
Like, why am I learning math for this?
Because math is a lot of math.
I know. I'm just saying.
But yeah, like I said, like it's not as important as you think. It's just a good rule to kind of think about.
Rule to follow by someone.
All right. Does anyone have any questions or comments about golden ratio or phi grid?
Not golden ratio, but can we see a little more into the triangle one? Because I see the triangle kind of gives me like leading lines vibes, but then
we're getting into the triangle. That's the next one.
Yep. So the triangle, as you guys can see in the second picture down.
And like I said, I will be renting.
Awesome that it uses almost entirely shots from 2049. I love that movie so much. It's like one of my favorites, if not my favorite.
Was not
That's one of my favorites too. I love the technology, just the way it was shot. It's just awesome.
So triangular composition uses triangles like this, where the lines spread out, and then you can kind of make an imaginary line to meet it to make a triangle.
Or sometimes I'll just distort whatever image and make it look like a triangle just to say it is.
No, but see how this is like how her leg kind of makes a triangle frame for him. So your eyes are drawn to that. It's used usually like, you can use doorways, you can use windows, they used a pool table in that earlier example. Triangular composition is used to kind of give it it's kind of the same thing as those lines where you're looking off into the distance. But if you look at a road and you look at way off in the distance, the road looks smaller and smaller as you look further away. And that kind of makes a triangle. If you could draw a line against it, it would make a little triangle. Maybe I can find a picture of that.
So I'm going to send you guys a video from, I believe, 2 weeks ago. And it's talking about all of those three. It's from Studio Binder. And it talks about the triangle. It talks about the lines, all those three.
Why
And
from
it
3
kind
weeks
of,
ago?
yeah, I think it was like 3 weeks ago. And it explains it a little more condensed.
Actually, right here. So if you could draw a line like that, you see how if you draw a line on each side of the road and you draw it all the way up, and then you draw a line at the bottom across, it's going to make a triangle.
No, like I was saying, the issue we find with this is that in some images, it kind of felt like they were trying to make a triangle, but not really doing so.
Yeah, I don't get some of it. Like they say Mona Lisa has it. I don't get that at all, but maybe it's just because
I kind of see it.
I mean, I kind of see it, but I don't know. Like, I feel like that's what
I don't think it's an exact triangle. I think it's supposed to be like a triangular shape, like have her in the center and then have like the corners, that's
like
kind of how I see it.
Is like usually when you have a bunch of people, you'll put the tallest people in the middle, and for like a triangle composition, you put the tallest people in the middle and then the shorter people at the side, so that there's an even balance between the people standing there.
But look at that crooked triangle over there. It just feels like they're trying to stretch it and make it look like it looks so weird. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's because it's the 3 point. Oh, so the triangle thing is.
I see it.
3 different points, 3 points of lighting right here.
Ah.
So when you look at all those 3 points, your eyes are drawn to that, making a triangle with your eyes. It's all about eye lines and where your eyes go.
Never mind, guys. I'm dumb. I just figured it out.
But then even with that triangle, it's kind of like distracting because you're looking. Which one you gonna look at first? The sky, light, the bottom, or the boat?
Yeah, I mean, you can look at any of them, I guess. I would personally probably, if this triangle wasn't here, I'd probably look at the boat.
So what you look at first describes your character. So if you see the moon first, you're an angelic character. If you look at the ocean, you're an asshole. If you look at the boat,
there's one of the fundamental.
You know what? I would take that.
Those are like a bunch of. Those are like a bunch of little triangles. Like I don't feel like that makes sense. That's what I'm saying. Like that image over there that has like a bunch of little triangles, like one big one, one little one.
Talking about this one?
Yeah. Like I feel like that's forcing it a bit.
So it's where the lines are. If you take away all these things, that's where the lines are, and they're making triangles out of it because it's the same thing as lines.
Yes, but I'm saying when you take a picture.
So
when you take a photo
in the foreground and you have this like a very long bridge behind them, you're going to be following that bridge after you look at them in the foreground. That's just what they're talking about.
I'm just curious to talk to a photographer and see.
I feel sorry for the photographer Priscilla comes up to and she's like, explain these triangles. And he's like, I just thought it looked good.
Like, you actually see this when you're taking a picture. Do you think, oh, triangle there, triangle here, triangle here, triangle there? I just feel like.
Look, this is what they're saying.
It's also confusing. I feel like it's confusing because like
you have that big bottle and it makes a triangle shape.
That triangle's crooked.
I feel like it doesn't make sense because I feel like where are they getting this theory from? Like, is it like how is this verified? Is like what I'm confused about.
The other one
just like
was like,
Brian
this is visually pleasing.
Saying it's more of a way of
it's a way for science to it's a way for science to
make everything more complicated.
Yes, that's all it is.
Okay.
So there has to be a scientific explanation for everything, and they can't figure out why people like pretty colors and pretty shapes and stuff. So this is their way of getting their scientific documentation.
No, I mean in film though.
You really don't like the picture. You just like the triangles. That's all it is.
No, but like in film, I get it. In film, I understand it because the triangle is meant to like center the subject and give off a certain emotion or blah blah blah. That part I understand somewhat. This hootenanny with all these different triangles and these crooked triangle looking things. It just feels like they're stretching the triangle. Okay, how can we make this a triangle? Maybe if we stretch a little bit this way.
Like, yeah, like it's the one like this makes sense, but she's saying like all the ones where it's like trying to make 30 different triangles within the frame.
Exactly. I feel like that you just took a picture and you were like, how many triangles can I draw on top of it?
Yeah.
This is actually apparently fine Waldo, but in a triangle version.
Yeah.
Here's the thing with the triangle and the shapes and stuff. So ultimately, photography and cinematography, it's considered art. So like you either have it or you don't. I mean, you can get good at it, you can get better at it, but there's always going to be somebody that naturally has it. So science cannot define it in a way. They have no idea. So this is their way of saying, this is their way of explaining art in a way. Science has put their thumbprint on it. That's all it is. And it's a way of teaching you when they come up with these lines, these rules of thirds, these 180-degree rule, all that stuff is just a scientific method for them to explain for people who don't really have that eye and don't really know. So if you can sit there and say, oh, I'm not a photographer, you can kind of use this to guide you to take better pictures in a way.
I feel like what like you could do, like I'm wondering though, like I'm picturing in my mind, like I always like to try and look for exceptions to rules and stuff. So like whenever I think about this, I feel like I feel like there are situations where like just a clean image or something that like kind of looks like not aesthetically pleasing in that way, but kind of like in an evocative way, like looks very like really square-y, and because of that like spreads some sort of message or implies something. I feel like that's like possible and makes sense. Like is
square
it saying
images
like
are
in
boring,
general?
Colin.
What?
According to people, square images are boring according to science.
Oh, okay. So I guess
so square.
You can't even do that. You just can't.
No, I understand it from a perspective of, like Brian was saying, you are trying to make an image symmetrical, or you're trying to, if you're painting, using geometric shapes is actually really, really helpful. I remember I took an art class, which I sucked at really bad, but they were showing you how to draw a face, and to draw a body and a face, they would draw all of these images, like a triangle first, and then a circle, and then lines, and blah, 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 which would help the symmetry of the body, and basically just break everything down into shapes to help you. So I understand it in like an artistic sense, like drawing, painting, that kind of thing.
That makes sense, but squares are more symmetric than triangles.
Right?
In more ways.
Yeah, that's why like, this triangle isn't, it's not symmetrical, so it's just like
so it's almost like people like, or maybe like an explanation is like people like symmetry, but they don't like too much symmetry. Like it has to
also that triangle. Does it irritate anybody else? I don't know if like it looks crooked. Maybe it's my OCD, but it looks wrong. Okay. It's kind of like when I go to my sister-in-law's house and I see a painting crooked and I can't help the urge of trying to fix it. It's kind of like that when I look at the triangle. It just feels.
Why do you have to bring that up? Because now I'm going crazy. I want to fix it myself.
It looks so weird. Yeah, it just looks crooked.
It isn't. I'm trying to remember the last time I ever remembered anything in geometry class, but I'm pretty sure that one what is it? Elastigirl's like the eye line between Elastigirl and Mr. Incredible is like the longest side, I think. It's like
of the
triangle. Because he's taller.
Well, yeah, but also just the type of triangle. It's not supposed to be symmetrical. There's different.
But
it could go the other way too, though.
I'm not saying I don't understand it. I'm not saying it doesn't have the power to evoke emotion in film or paintings or whatever. I'm not saying it isn't a useful tool for those, especially for those starting out. I'm just saying it's incredibly irritating how people try to find triangles and everything, and how those images have like a bajillion little drawn triangles.
I'll say something like this is a lot better like for the example of triangles, then
We all need to send crooked pictures to Priscilla now. Crooked painting pictures.
irritate her all day trying to fix them.
Dude, I have no depth perception due to the like lack of vision in the other eye, but I still freak out. And I'm like, Coda, is the coffee table crooked? Please help me. And then I'll just like feel it out, like put my hand and measure.
Yeah.
I have a problem.
No, it's not a problem. I mean, that's.
Let's continue though. Let's continue. I was just using
No,
that
she
as
do
an
got a problem.
example.
No, but for real, let's continue. But yeah, so I mean, it's just like anything else. Like it's just a rule of thumb. The main one I found to be helpful was this rule of thirds, because you can actually see that one actually used a lot, like where they're on these lines, they're on these intersections.
Yeah.
And the last 2/3 is usually like broken off for more space for whatever they're looking at, compared to whatever, these other rules that we were looking at.
All right.
Rule of thirds is actually used quite a lot if you add these lines.
Oh,
that and the lines. The lines actually work too, I think. Like the lines leading up to the girls make you look
Good job, Sarah.
especially with them in the center, exactly in the center. Like it just equal parts on all sides. So they're directly in
Yeah,
that
I feel like they all
Yeah.
have their
Well, I see them in the
purpose.
cameras. When on
And
set,
they all
you
can be
look at the
useful.
cameras and it always look like they got a bunch of lines, and I guess that's a reference for them to make sure they're getting the shot exactly where they want it and framing.
Yeah, so that it's
Yeah.
very
So it's like
very
all that.
calculated. Like a lot of the shots you see are very calculated, especially on bigger movies. So
It is
Right.
super interesting to see just how much concentration it must take as well, and making sure that the framing is just right. Like it's super interesting, and it gives me a whole new
It's
appreciation.
easy.
Learning everything is just giving me a new appreciation. I have a new appreciation for actors. Reading the directing actors book, I have a new appreciation for filmmaking. It's just really amazing to see how much work actually goes into all of this and how it makes sense. It's just a little annoying to me because I'm annoying, but it makes sense.
Yes, that's very true. I appreciate you saying that.
That I'm annoying? Yes, I know.
We didn't.
there's a lot more work.
Oh, I know that's where he was going. So I was just...
The next thing I want to move. Oh, does anybody have any
What
questions
was that?
comments on any of that continuity?
What was that sound?
I just
that
have
was
like
that was Brett.
That
I just
sounded
have
like
like a comment. I just think like I don't know. I feel like so all this is really like approximate, and I feel like what Brian said like makes a lot of sense. Like you have to kind of just keep it in mind, but it's not like a rule of thumb. Like it's not like something that you need to like make sure exists in your work no matter what. Because I
Right.
feel like as long as you kind of fit some criteria in there somehow, it'll like and like it feels instinctively right. You have to kind of like or that'll work. So you have to kind of develop that instinct too.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Like I said, for example, like one thing that helps me a lot is the grid due to like me not having much depth perception. So I actually use it a lot. Well, I'm using it a lot more now in my
The
pictures, and
third?
it's actually helping me.
Yeah, the
Rule of thirds. Rule of
Yeah,
thirds.
I
Sorry,
like the
my
rule
head.
of third. I feel like the
I
rule
don't,
of third.
again, I don't know what it is. Whenever I know all the words, and then I get to this meeting, I think it's just Brian's intelligence is like intimidating to me.
No,
So
it's not.
like,
No, it's not.
I get here
It's
and I'm
just
so
you.
scared of saying something dumb that I actually do.
same, Brett. Just let her.
But the rule of thirds is just kind of like, it is very helpful to me when I'm trying to like see something, for example, in the distance, and I'm trying to like focus on it, or when I'm trying to take a picture. Having that grid is really helpful for me.
Yeah, me too. I agree.
All right. Anybody else have any comments or questions?
I just want to say I have to go, guys. Sorry, guys.
Okay, Colin. Thanks for coming.
Hey, Colin, thanks for staying for 30 minutes.
Colin, you're like a cheap. I don't even want to say it, but you just come and go.
You're gonna say it like a cheap date.
I'm really busy right now, but I just found an internship, so I'm happy.
Oh, nice.
Same
Oh,
here.
that's awesome! Congratulations.
I just
Yeah,
found
My
an
boy, I
internship
train
as
you
well.
Nice. Yeah,
I'm so
I'm
proud
excited for it. It's
for
gonna
you
be fun.
guys.
Yeah, definitely.
So
But yeah,
definitely
okay,
make
anyway,
sure you
see
make some
guys.
money,
I
man.
gotta go, and I'll be
Yeah,
less
make
busy
some
now.
money,
I'm
Colin,
like
because you
traveling.
need to be able to pay to get
be
to
what?
come visit us. You know, like.
Yeah, wait. I'll like if I can. Yeah, that'll be fun.
No, not if you can.
No,
You will.
yeah. There's no.
This pandemic comes, it gets over sometimes.
There's no if. There is only when.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. No,
He's
that would
from
be really
LA,
fun.
though, yeah. That is true. He's all the way.
Oh no, I was talking about.
But
I
he's
was
in
talking
Vermont
about.
right now.
All
He's closer.
You get it? You get it? Okay. Anyway.
right, Ryan.
Bye, Colin.
Bye.
All right, guys, the next thing we're going to talk about is acting continuity. Now, continuity, we've talked about it a little bit. Well, we talked about it quite a lot, but when it's the actor doing it, you got to make sure that you are doing the same actions over and over on screen so that
Same
something like this doesn't happen.
Thing.
What was that?
Same actions, or wearing the same thing, or basically doing the same action on camera.
Yeah. You can change up the way you deliver it maybe, but you always want to be doing the same action, the same physical action. Like this, she's picking up the cup with her right hand, and then in the next shot, she has it in her left hand. That's a continuity error. So the actor needs to also pay attention to, as well as the script supervisor and everyone else if they catch it. Anybody who catches continuity errors needs to speak up because it's really important, because then you can't use that close-up shot of her if it's too distracting when you cut to her and all of a sudden she has the cup in her other hand. You got to be careful with that. They said, like, a lot of people were talking about how some actors, their close-ups, their main parts would have to be cut out or just have them like in a wide shot for their main emotional parts because they didn't do the same action, or they were doing something completely different than what they did in the previous cut, the previous take. So it couldn't edit together. It didn't edit together well. It made it look weird. It didn't flow. And because of that, they couldn't use it. And then the actors would get mad because, that was my best take. But it doesn't matter as much about best takes as it matters about not distracting the audience and making something feel weird or off. So continuity errors will do that a lot. Game of Thrones had this problem when they had a Starbucks cup in the back, and that put everybody
and then
out
the
of
water
the
bottle again. They didn't
out of the
learn.
episode. They weren't getting back into the episode. They weren't in the story anymore. It reveals the the curtain, and it makes the curtain come back and show, oh, this is all just fake. So you don't want that to happen. You don't want continuity errors. And so when you're acting, or when you're directing an actor, or being a script supervisor, you want to be paying attention to these little details like this. If someone
Right.
has two buttons and they're both buttoned up, and in the next take, one button is off, it's going to look weird. It's going to be distracting. It might not be immediately noticeable, but it might take some people out of it a little bit to be like, what? Something feels weird.
When you watch it a second time, you notice it. You be like, oh.
Yeah, and you shouldn't have to. Like, you shouldn't want your audience to watch it a second time and notice these things. So you want to make sure to try to keep everything as consistent as possible. Like the way you're holding something, for instance, or the slice, or how big it is. From
They said
take
the
to take.
preparation is the hardest part.
See, like in this, she has both hands on it, and then in the next take, the close-up, she only has her right hand on it. That might not be that noticeable, but it is something that is different. So you can see that it is something different and weird.
Yeah.
So when you're acting on camera, you want to make sure you're constantly doing the same thing, the same way. You can, make the inflections of the words different. You can act a little bit different with the way you give your performance. But if you're doing a certain move, if you're picking up a cup when you say a certain word, you want to make sure that every take you do, you pick up that cup on that word. That way it edits together perfectly.
Right.
That way they don't have to go back and then you're picking up the cup again and again, because they're not going to be able to use that. So anytime you have an actor, make sure either whether you are acting or you're directing the actors, make sure you're trying to get that continuity, the performance continuity. Another thing to think about is the physical continuity. Another thing to think about is the emotional continuity. You want to make sure that because film isn't shot sequentially, because it's not shot, every scene isn't shot in order. You want to make sure that the actors are, or you as the actor, are keeping a similar emotional level from throughout the movie, because you don't, not throughout the movie, but from scene to scene. If, for instance, you are shooting a scene in a room where two friends are fighting and they're mad at each other, and then the next day you're shooting a different scene altogether, that's at the end of the movie when they make up for it and they become best friends again. And then the next day you're shooting the scene that takes place directly after the fight. You want to make sure that your acting goes back to the level of being angry at them again and not being forgiving, because otherwise those scenes won't flow well together. The edit can only do so much, and it can't take away emotional levels, making them feel angry, and then they're feeling way less angry the next scene because they shot it 3 days later. So the actor always needs to keep that in mind, as well as the director. What's happening in the scene, what's happening in the story, when does it take place, no matter what's going on in the real world, where like it might take place, you're shooting it a week later. You still got to figure out a way to get to that same emotional level to match it, so it doesn't feel different. Even if you act angry again, you want to make sure you act the same level of angry, because especially for scenes that are supposed to take place directly after it, like maybe the character follows the other one into the kitchen, but you're not going to shoot that kitchen scene until a week later. But you got to make sure you match that level of anger so that it flows consistently. Anybody have any comments or anything like that? Sarah, Devinder, Brent, you guys are all the actors in here. Do you have any comments?
No, you pretty much nailed it, bro.
Sweet.
And we don't really have to say because yeah, you did nail it.
Awesome. But yeah, so you guys just always want to make sure you're keeping all that in mind. And even if you have a script supervisor and all these other things, it's up to everybody to keep continuity, because, like things slip through the cracks. There's a bunch of stuff going on. So everything, props, costumes, the acting, performance, blocking, everything needs to be consistent from scene to scene and take to take.
Yep, it's like one of my films. I'll say example for me. It's like one of my commercials I did. I had fake cop lights on a car. One scene they're together, one scene they're not together. This is one of the first projects I did.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I didn't realize until I was in the editing station that, editing, it's like, I didn't realize that I did that because no one kept track of that.
Yeah. And it's hard. Like, that's why there's always like a review of the footage most of the time, or there's like people take pictures of the costumes, what the actor's makeup looked like, the hair, all these little things. Cause like, if you do shoot it a month later and there's problems, you have to do a pickup shot, they have to make sure that actor's hair is the same and that they look the same so that the shots flow together as well.
Yep, that's very true.
Yeah, so that's all just a continuity for actors or for
And
directing actors.
the same thing can happen with cartoons even too. Like I've seen some
cartoons do it a lot. Yeah.
Yep.
They have like a different cup or something.
Or they're basically in one, like, I'll say an example I saw a long time ago. I was just watching continuity mistakes. Matt, you remember, I don't know if you guys seen the show Little Madeline?
Madeline?
Yeah.
I don't know if I have.
Every second shot of her, she'd be wearing blue. Like she would change from what was it? Her blue. Oh no, she would wear a blue thing, and then when it's a wide shot, she'd be wearing a red dress.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like it kept on changing back and forth. Every wide shot, she was wearing red. Every close up, she'd be wearing blue.
And an animation? That's so weird.
Yeah.
I think they do it on purpose, because I'd be watching some anime and I'd be like, because it's an animation and you're going frame by frame. So you cannot tell me that some animator is going frame by frame and not noticing these things. It's just frustrating. I think they do it on purpose.
It annoys the hell out of me.
I would like to
I'm sure
know,
some shows do.
I would like to know if there's different animators working on different parts of the same scene, maybe.
There are, but that's still not an excuse. So you mean to tell me they don't communicate with each other or even watch the show like that? Kind of, it's just frustrating. It's just frustrating. Oh,
yeah.
It's a basic thing. It's like, hey, what color dress is she wearing today?
yeah.
Right.
But that's probably why. Most cartoons they're wearing the same thing all the time.
Like I watched
It's
one
easier to
episode,
animate.
and they actually switched the costumes on Goku and Vegeta. Switched the color scheme, and I'm like, how did you do this?
Yeah.
Okay, that I kind of think it might be just trolling on purpose.
It's a cartoon. I'm like, you guys are animating it frame by frame. Like, how do you make that mistake?
Yeah.
Oh man, I saw that. I turned it off. I'm like, nope, I can't watch this. No, that's gonna annoy me.
Hey, like you said, they do it on purpose.
Huh?
They must.
They do it on purpose.
Oh, for film people, that drives me nuts.
Yeah.
I-
All right. So the last thing I was going to talk about is just how editing can either enhance a performance of an actor or it can make it worse.
Depends on the editor.
It does. It does depend on the editor if they're doing a good job or not. If they know, if you got a lot of, it also depends if they have like B-roll and stuff that they can cut to. If the actors' takes are, if they do have continuity errors, but they have like their best takes during continuity errors, sometimes an editor might, show a clip of a B-roll while they're talking or show something else so that they can still use the dialogue and the action without having to actually show the actor the entire time.
Yeah, I see
There
that
are
a
ways
lot.
to work
Yeah.
around it. Of course, it's up to the actor to do a good performance and try to match it each time, but it's also up to the editor to pick that performance, pick those scenes, and put them together to make the acting performance look better. Like if something feels like it's going too quickly, they can add in little clips or in between takes where people are quiet or a reaction shot or something to make it kind of drag out a little better so it flows better. Or vice versa, they can cut out the extra chunks that aren't needed. They can cut out dialogue parts that feel weird or that were added in improv, and they can just chop it all together to make it flow a lot better, to go quickly or to go slow or to go normal, depending on how this scene was actually shot on set. Ways to fix like a bad performance: you can cut to a different angle, you can cut to another actor, or you can provide a buffer or a cutaway, as in like a B-roll shot. You can remove dialogue if it's not really needed, use reaction shots, cut out some of the process, like if people are going upstairs to go to a room and you have all of that footage, you can decide like that doesn't need to be needed, let me cut that out because that's going to slow down the performance, make it more boring. Play dialogue off camera by showing either the other character or the objects around the room. So if their dialogue isn't the best, they're not giving the best performance, you can cut to something else, and that kind of makes the viewer not focus as much on the dialogue. They're still hearing it, but they're not focused on only that and the performance. They're focused on whatever's happening in camera, so it actually helps. They say like just to edit around, try to limit the weakness because everybody has their weaknesses depending on how it was. Maybe every take they can't be super sad, so you want to be aware of that and be able to limit that
Right.
room to make
Because
it.
I was gonna say that's a lot of emotion. Sometimes you keep shooting that scene. It's like, yo, bro, I didn't cry about 5 times already. Like, you're gonna have to switch it up to something. So show something sad because I ain't crying no more.
Yeah, so they said like a way to do it could be when they're on their wide shot, you don't have to make them cry because they're not really going to notice, especially if they turn around or something. And only on their close up, maybe have them actually cry for the emotional part. Stuff like
Right.
that, just to limit the amount, to make their performance seem better than, they can't do it constantly over and over again. So you can't get in
My
that
friend,
space over and over.
side note, my friend used to bring onions and he used to put it next to his face before the scene, and then he'll get him a whole bunch of tears with some onions.
Would it work? But it only works for a certain amount of time, right?
Yeah. Only like with
There's
the
also
continuity comes important. So when he would do that scene, they would cut it that part, and then he would have to do the onion, and then they'll pick up from that part, and it worked.
Yeah. Who was someone else was commenting?
there's for crime scenes. There's also the mint people use sometimes too.
Mint? Oh, I didn't know that.
I could look at Priscilla and just cry all the time, so that could work.
You love picking up.
I didn't know my beauty was that hard for
Yes.
you, honestly.
Yes, exactly. Your beauty bring tears to my eyes.
Yeah, but does anybody have any comments or questions about just editing around a performance, making it better, or just if you've seen Brian or anybody who's actually shot stuff or been on
What V was saying, was outfits and makeup too. I snap a pic of myself, especially if I take care of my own look for the scene. So that was one of the things, which again, I haven't sent it yet because I haven't had time, but I will tomorrow. I'm going to resend the videos on script supervisors, because a script supervisor's job, a lot of what they do is also take pictures or videos and keep track of what they're wearing in the scene. And one of them was showing like how they would get them to hold like a piece of paper with the time and the day and the shooting and the scene written on it, and they would take a picture with their outfit so that he would know. But yeah, when you don't, and that's why they say you should always have someone keeping continuity in the movie, but they do like a million jobs. So I will be sending those videos out again as a refresher. But yeah, that is really good. V,
I
for you to
actually been
do
wanting
as well.
to learn how to be a script supervisor, so this will be very useful for me.
Well, good luck. It's a lot. It's like a freaking one-man job doing a million things. But if you have the discipline for it, and if you have the attention to detail, that's basically the main things: attention to detail, multitasking, discipline to do it. It's a lot, but I wish you the best of luck. I really do. Like it can be a really fun job from what I saw, but it can also be a really demanding job.
Yeah, so I guess this videos later. But yeah, but like I said, it's up to everyone to keep continuity, not just because the script supervisor might make a mistake or might miss something because they're just one person. So you don't want to just...
Yeah, so it's a really good thing to do.
It's always good to ask, hey, was my coat on in that last scene? Because it might not even be in the same day. It might be the next day you're doing the next scene. You're going outside to do the next shot. Well, that's probably not, that might happen on the same day. That might happen the next day.
Yeah.
You want to be sure to be like, hey, was in that last scene, was I in my coat or was I putting it on? Did I have it on my arm? And that's a good way to kind of get people thinking about it, if nothing else, so that you can go check it if you can, if you have the footage, if it's not being offloaded somewhere. You might be able to just check it in the camera and see some different ways, but it's always good to ask and be aware of those things.
I had
I was just gonna say, honey, I was just gonna say, I'm sorry, just really quick, Bobby, just to be clear, I wasn't like discouraging you at all. I was just like letting you know, because when I told them that I was like studying to be a production manager, Brian set me straight and was like, just know it's gonna be a lot. And
I know. I didn't take it that way. I kind of looked into it, and it's a lot. And you have to make sure the continuity is right. You have to make sure that everything goes just right, and not just with the script, with like the wardrobe and it's a lot. It's a lot of work.
Yeah,
I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't discouraging you at all.
Oh no, not at all.
Acting continuity. Wardrobe, props, all these different kinds of continuity you have to be watching out for, and then also what's in frame.
Oh no, filmmaking is it's a lot of work involved. There's a lot of effort and a lot of little detail involved in it. It just doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah, like once you start looking into every job, you just see how much each person
you appreciate it more, and you were like, oh man, this is really a masterpiece when it's all said and done, because it's not easy, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. So
yeah,
you appreciate it that much more.
A painting takes like 20 colors to paint it. So each color is a different job on a set.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So I had mentioned long time ago in one of the meetings about if you're gonna shoot, you got to pick a season and shoot in that season. Like I think you would think that the best season to shoot in is spring and fall, but they're really not, because they're short. They're such short seasons. But like Lakota was saying about the jacket on, the jacket off. So like I had shot a film, like I think it was in the fall. No, it was it was in the spring when the weather was warming up. And in the morning time, the actors had their jackets on, and then in the evening when it started heating up, that's when it was like I was going through the process of telling people to put their jackets back on. Like every take, you need to put your jacket back on, because it was getting hot during the day. So like pick a season. Like if it's hot, it's hot, but don't try to like, oh, it's it's cold outside, but it's like 90 degrees. You're gonna kill your actors. It's gonna get annoying because they're gonna want to, take clothing off and whatnot, and not,
So what do you suggest?
Unless you film in
Spring,
a place like
Like
because I was gonna
I
say
suggest pick a season. Just pick a season. Don't try to shoot it like, I got a lot of people, like I'm shooting this one movie now. They're like, oh man, they want me to do the sound for one of their short films, and I read the script. It's only 30 pages, and I was under the assumption that they would have been finished by now. They started like, when did they start? Back in like April they started, and I was like, they should have been finished by now, but they're still shooting it. They're still, and I'm like, yo, you're going into summer right now. When we started, we were in April, which was kind of warm, but now it's like super hot. Now you're gonna have sweaty actors.
So in a case like that where you realize that the shooting schedule is not
organized.
going well, or you just wait for the next season or wait for the fall, right?
Well, it depends. If it's an independent production, you should, like Brian's saying, or you just change the season within the script unless it's like integral that it's in a certain season. But
when me and Coda were debating,
but there's certain, like especially on like pilot season or certain Christmas movies and stuff like that, if you're gonna have an actual like production job to get this thing done in a certain time, they're probably gonna give you a schedule that doesn't match up with the seasons. Your Christmas movie might be shot in summer or spring for the next year. So it depends on what budget and what size the production is. But if it's your own thing, then definitely, like if it's your own thing, or if it's a friend's or something, try to talk them into it, because it makes it a lot easier, especially if the script doesn't really need to be in a certain season. Then why not just change it and have it be like whatever season it actually is, because it doesn't really do anything different.
So what me and Coda were debating,
seeing a summer movie if it's fall, like no one's gonna really care. But if it's like a certain specific movie that you need to have it out at a certain time, like a Christmas movie or a holiday movie, you'll probably have to shoot it out of season.
So what me and Coda were talking about, like we were going to start filming this semester, but then we were like, no, next semester is better. And we were talking about how we think for us, if we could find a soft spot to film in cooler months, Virginia's hard because like one day it's super hot, one day it's cool, one day it's raining, one day it's sun. It's very like uneven, but it also takes forever to actually get cold. And then when it does, it takes forever to actually get warm. So if I feel like it also depends on where you're filming. I know places like Maine, their summer lasts like 2 months. So, and then the rest of it is pretty much cool weather. So and then you have places where it never snows and it's always like either really warm or really cool. So I feel like that's also something you need to take into consideration, is the weather where you're filming and the weather where you live, and kind of notice the patterns around where you live and see, okay, which season is more stable, which period between seasons could I get away with maybe extending shooting, that kind of thing.
Well, that's why Hollywood. That's why they picked Hollywood in California. Fun fact, like originally film originated in New York, and then they brought it over to California because of the weather. They have the studios there where, because they can shoot like all year round and still have decent weather, as opposed to New York where it just like when it gets cold, it gets cold.
Yeah.
So that's why that's why Hollywood is where it's at, because of that, for weather reasons and whatnot.
You have your hand up, Gino?
Oh, if I don't fall off, my bad.
Oh.
I didn't expect you to call him up for me.
Sorry, I saw your hand.
Remind me what we were talking about. I just lost track of my brain.
We were talking about shooting in season or shooting out of season.
Yeah, like no, I was just gonna say an example of like what I have experienced. Like on one set I was on a TV show. They shot summer for winter. I'm not gonna name the show unless we're off recording. because
No.
obviously,
We're still recording.
yep, that's what I mean. But basically, some people did die on sets.
Wow.
And basically, even myself, I almost passed out myself because we were wearing winter gear.
Yeah, normally when they're shooting for the Hallmark movies and stuff, they have like indoor sets where it's like a little cooler.
Yeah, we were outside in the blistering heat in winter gear.
Yeah.
And I had to buy a whole new set of clothes after that day. I was drenched and I almost passed out. But what I'm trying to say here is don't make your actors basically wear winter clothes even on the cuts. Let them take it off. Let them have water.
Yeah. I feel like what was I gonna? Because I got distracted. Oh right. I feel like the main thing is like check your weather where you're at, see where you can get away with. Because what I was just thinking is, because if you have the option to wait until next season, that's great. But you won't always have that option. So that's why I mentioned the like shooting, seeing your weather and seeing how much leeway you have in between the seasons.
Yeah.
One last thing. So on that note, when you're talking about weather, so like if you have a scene where you have indoor shooting and then you have outdoor shooting, like let's say you get a house and like you got some outside stuff to shoot, get the outside stuff first, like get it done, get it out the way.
Yeah, that's
because if you're shooting on 2 days and don't say, oh, we'll shoot it tomorrow, because what if you have a nice sunny day out and then the next day is a cloudy day?
It's a blizzard.
Yeah, it's just gonna so just get all the the outside stuff is principle, always principle.
And the thing is, like, even in one day the weather changes.
Yeah, I can't stand getting on set and they're like, oh well, we have this outside stuff to shoot. I'm like, why didn't we shoot that first? You know, that should have been the first stuff to shoot. Like you can get away with making 12 o'clock noon or making 12 o'clock kind of look like the morning time a little bit. You can kind of get away with that, but you cannot get away with a cloudy day. You can't get away with that. So you can't make a sun. But if you're indoor, you can fog out your window. You can overexpose your windows a lot and make it look like
you can bag up your windows too.
You can bag up your windows, but like for outside, if you're shooting outside, there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
So it's
Only
not
thing you can do is put a giant flag up, but that doesn't work all the time.
Yeah. So like you could shoot all your outside stuff and then expose for what you shot outside. But like if you shot all the inside stuff first and you have like a nice, the windows are open, the sun is blaring through the windows and stuff, and then you go shoot outside and then outside it's a gray day. Like this not gonna match.
Yeah.
So just get all this stuff done find what's most important and get that first. Like even if like, and that's the thing, like the outside stuff is usually like the stuff that's not even like, maybe 1 or 2 pages and then go inside. And then everybody always overlooks it. And it's like, oh, we'll get that tomorrow. Nah, because tomorrow it might rain tomorrow. Like let's get it right now. Well,
yeah, anything that's less in your control, always try to get that first, especially if it permits the way you want it to be shot. Like Brian said, you don't know if you're trying to get a raining scene, like you can kind of mimic the rain, but if it's actually raining, why not just go get it? It's just better. Or if it's sunny or if it's cloudy, whatever weather, it's not in your control to match that exactly, especially depending on the budget of your production. But anyway, guys, that was the last of the stuff that we had for today. Does anybody have any questions or comments about anything before I just say what we have for Monday?
No, I think you gave a good brief of everything.
All right, cool. All right, guys. So Monday we're gonna be looking over insurance forms, location release forms, actor and crew release forms, a shooting script and what that is. It's the finalized script, and then establish.
So super sexy stuff.
Oh yeah, all the legalities. No, all these important types of documents that you're going to need on your set to really make it more professional. Make sure that you're not. I mean, unless you want to, but it's always good to know about these things, and always good to have people under contract. So that's the stuff we're gonna be looking over, and establishing shots. Just like we're gonna have a little bit more of an in-depth look at that, just to kind of see how you might grab the best ones when. That would be another thing to get maybe immediately, because it's usually outside, and so you might want to do that first before anything else, like Brian was saying.
And Daniel.
And Daniel. All right, guys. I'm gonna stop the recording there.
So guys, I adore